Welcome to the Ambient iPad. In this video, I'm going to use only effects from GarageBand to create a big ambient bass sound. The signal chain is a Fender American original 60s precision bass. It's plugged directly into a universal audio Volt 276 interface, which communicates back and forth with the iPad Pro through a USB-C hub. I also have an Audio-Technica mic going through a Focusrite Scarlett 18i8 interface, but I'm using that interface as a mixer to get the signal into the camera. So I'm using a bass. You can use any instrument based on what I'm going to look at and talk about today. I mean, you could even use a microphone and just tap on it. You can use a keyboard, a guitar, whatever it might be. So there's two approaches that I've taken in experimenting with this. No external apps, no external AV3s, just the effects that are in GarageBand. But first I want to show the major limitation that I have with GarageBand. That's once you have something set up, you have these effects here, panel on the left that you can, move the volume, move the pan, control different effects. However, once you hit record, all that grays out and you have no control over that at all. It can't turn effects on and off, can't change anything. So it really limits how you can use GarageBand, at least for the way I use it. So instead of recording, you can just use it as a live performance tool. Although when I do the jam, I will turn recording on. So there's two approaches that can be used in order to get this big ambient sound. You can, at least for the bass, or really any instrument, go through an amp. So I've got a bass amp here with a pedal. First thing I need to do, however, is change the channel because it defaults to input 1 and we need input 2. Put monitoring on. So that's the stock amp sound. It's meant to be an Ampeg. Turn on the chorus. Then you can add more effects here. Let me add a... But you can hear it's in mono, because mono source, the pedals are in mono. The other thing is, besides a few pedals, 4 I think is the limit you can put here, you also have access to effects over here, master effects, as well as you can put a couple in here. There's really not a lot of room. The other approach to use, which is to just go in, and I typically, this is the way that I record into GarageBand, I choose voice. And I choose fun because that's where the clean setting is. It's a totally clean setting here. I'll need to do the same thing, which is switch that to input 2. So that's the direct setting. And then you would add effects over here. So we've got an echo going, the master echo. A lot of reverb. So you can see where we're going with this. All right, enough of that. So let me just walk through a few ways that I set it up, and then I'll actually go a little more in depth with the setup that I'm going to use. I have 3 here. The first one is an amp, and I have a number of pedals here. Some are on, some are off. Let's turn that on so you can hear what this sounds like. It's a really big sound. Using the reverb and the delay that you had heard before. Those are the master ones. I'll talk about that too. So that's a pretty big sound. Then we've got over here, this is a more direct sound, but using a lot of different effects. Let me turn phaser on too. And we need to turn monitoring on. So you can hear a big sound too, a lot less low end. So just a different sound. And then let me move into the sound I'm going to use, which is called stereo spread. This falls under producer effects if you're looking for it. And I've got a whole bunch, let's turn monitoring off there. I've got a whole bunch of different effects here. I'm going to turn most of them off so you can hear what's going on. Now, let me go in here and turn down the reverb and turn down the echo. And let's get started. I'm keeping the EQ on. So that's essentially a clean sound. Compression. EQ, let me add a phaser. all these effects have different settings that you can modify. We'll add a chorus next. As you can see, it's just a little bit of chorus, like 10%. This is really just to lessen the low end boost on the micro phaser, the phaser. So this is what we get. And turn off the chorus. Just adds a little bit of high end, a little bit of chorus. Opens it up a little, but it's very subtle. And then I've got a tremolo just to get some movement here in the sound. Pretty low rate, just moving back and forth. You're noticing it a lot now when all the other effects are going, particularly the master reverb and the master delay. It's not as noticeable. And finally, a stereo delay. This is part of the stereo spread patch. You cannot modify this. I don't know what it's doing. It's doing this. It's spreading the sound. You've got a very low repeat rate just to sound like it's in stereo. So let's turn it off. See, now you hear the tremolo. But with this, the tremolo, it's there in the background, but not very hidden by the stereo spread. All right. And then let's go into the master effects. Actually, let me show what I'm doing on the effects, on the EQ. So I essentially, this is just like a high pass filter with some shelving. I think I'm at about 105 hertz and a little boost to 2K. To be honest, that 2K boost is more appropriate when I'm playing the fretless. I'd also used the fretless when setting this up. I would probably move this a little more to 3 kilohertz or 4 for this bass because it has flatwound strings. But enough of that. It's set up, sounds fine. The master effects. So we've got some nice delay, quarter note delay with, not a lot of repeats. This is really the default sound. This ambient delay is very similar, but a lot more repeats. And you can hear, it's almost like a Roland space echo. As it's disappearing, you're getting that high kind of grittiness. Believe me, when you're playing, a lot of that is lost. I am going to be using another cool one, and I'm definitely going to do a video at some point. Is a '60s echo effect. Very cool. But for this one, let's stick with the default. Again, just gets a little more repeats in there. The reverb, we're using the hugest reverb that they have on here. It's called Moon Dome. Let's get that volume up here. Let me lower that a little. So we got a big sound. You can hear, you can even go more, but it's pretty huge. Harmonics work. Taps like this over the harmonics. Just builds up some sound. I've got buzzing too. But sounds actually pretty cool. All right. So that's the setup. Again, just I'm using as many effects as I can fit in here. A lot of modulation, tremolo. The phaser, the chorus again is just doing a little bit. That stereo delay is how you get that real wide setup, and then I've got the huge reverb and that master effect. So let me delete this. Let's just do the jam. So really big sound there. Obviously relying hugely on those master effects, the delay, and that moon dome reverb, which just goes on and on and on. I turned the bass down only because with the precision being a passive bass, I get near the pickups. You know, there's some grounding issues occasionally, a little noise, pops, clicks. You heard all that. What was interesting is a lot of that noise ended up sounding like a synthesizer kind of in the background, so I left that in. I'll also do a jam using the same setup with the fretless bass, which no noise, no nothing. That's a little more of a pure sound and also different. And I'll post a link up here and within the description for that. I wanted to use the precision in this live jam only because precision is very ubiquitous out there. A lot of people who have a bass would have a precision style. So I wanted to show that you don't need 6 strings, you don't need 5 strings. You can, 4-string bass. You just have to pay attention to the notes you're playing. There were parts there where it got really muddy when I was getting down here, but I stayed mostly in the mid and top part of the fingerboard. And I'll point out again, I'm using flatwound strings, so those are a little dull to begin with, but once you start going through the effects, it just sounds really nice. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.